Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the general manager at StretchLab LoHi. Today's guest is Ryan Prieto. Ryan, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks, Quentin. It's awesome to be here.
For sure. So, Ryan, we're just going to jump into 4 questions that I like to ask all of my guests. I kind of like to call them the conversational warm-up questions. The first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, I like to say that I have kind of the before I had a child morning routine and after I had a child morning routine. So I guess what my life is now that I have had my daughter, she's now 2. Her name is Luna. I'm sure she'll come up later. She's taken over the world. I try to get up before her. So my morning will consist of getting up to my own life, quiet. I get to make my coffee. I do try to drink a glass of water before I ingest anything else. I get my coffee started. I get to have my own personal time and try to get ready myself. I know that sounds so simple, but until you have a 2-year-old that takes over your life, that is my own personal space, my own personal time.
For sure.
And I absolutely cherish that.
Okay, so I want to touch on, just for a moment, what was pre-Luna morning routine like for you?
Complete heaven. Just kidding. So that actually consisted of yoga practice. I loved to wake up and do my own stretching, my own meditation. I was pretty good at doing at least 5 to 10 minutes of some sort of morning meditation, and that was a really great ritual for me every morning.
Okay.
Then followed by my own coffee, my own morning routine, and then I would head out to my own business that I owned that was down the street, that I would either ride my little moped, my motorcycle, or my bike, and it was just my own little life.
It sounds like heaven.
It really was.
And then Luna came, right?
And then Luna came.
Cool.
Yeah.
We are definitely gonna touch on your daughter here a little bit later. So the second question that I have for you, Ryan, do you have a favorite book or a book that you like to gift often?
100%. They're both the same. My favorite book, one that has really impacted my life, and that I think is my go-to to gift to people, is The Alchemist.
Yep.
It's a book that I had read, and there was a point in my life that I had reread, and it was just the right time, the right place, and it was a very pivotal moment for me. And I think that it's a book that when I gift it to people, I almost have a sense of, it's the right time for them, you know? And it's just one of the most beautifully written books and truly transformational messages that I've ever received personally. So it's very, very special to me.
What's kind of like, you know, like what is that one takeaway? Because you just said like it's like one of the most transformational messages that you've ever like received. Like what is that message, or kind of what's like one thing that just when you first read it, it kind of like just pierced your heart?
I think it was the reminder that you can't follow the dreams that society puts on you or that your family puts on you, but the dreams that you have for yourself, and that if you follow the oracles or the messages that the universe, God, whatever it is, the higher being that you follow, if you follow those messages and you follow your dreams, then that is your destiny and your life's purpose, and you can't go wrong. And we all have this path that's been written, and it's an incredible journey to be on.
Right.
And if you're trying to live a life that is not authentically yours, it's almost like you're a salmon that's trying to swim upstream, and it's exhausting. And as soon as you figure out that you can just be whatever you want, and that there's personal responsibility in that, it's really easy, and you just turn around and you start swimming with a current that's paved out for you, and it's really beautiful. Yeah,
that sounds good. And that's with well over 100 conversations I've had through the podcast. That book has come up. I'd say probably pushing close to 10 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's definitely a very impactful book. So, all right. So the next question is a part of the warm up. Ryan, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? And I like to kind of preface this. We all go through different seasons in life. So this can be a favorite quote, mantra, or word for the current season. Maybe it's 2020, or maybe it's a favorite quote, mantra, word from a previous season of life. However you kind of want to take that, favorite quote, mantra, or word.
Yeah, I think this has been one that I've had for a while, and this is not a dress rehearsal. So I like to say that to people a lot when I'm in conversations and people are a little nervous to do something, or they're in that wrong job, or they're hesitant to make a choice, or I mean, there's a million reasons that you could use that quote, but this isn't a dress rehearsal, right? Like, there's no do-over.
Right.
There's not a mulligan. Like, this is a beautiful gift that we've been given, so rock it out.
For sure.
And play full out. It's not a dress rehearsal.
I like it.
So have fun with it.
Yeah, that's good. You ooze that, by the way.
Ooze.
You
I
ooze it.
Ooze. The words you use, gusher, ooze.
I know, gusher's good,
so
right?
Fun, yes.
Yep. We'll probably get to gusher a little bit later. For the listeners, you'll probably find out later what all that means. But all right, so the final question for the warm up: favorite or most listened to podcast?
It's probably a cross between three. I'm a big podcaster. Now
Love
I
it.
have yours that's added to my list.
Yep,
I had to do
it
my
better be.
homework. Yes.
Subscribe, you know.
Done. Check. I'm big into politics.
Okay,
so
cool.
Pod Save America is on the top of my list. I love tarot, and I love all things magic and astrology and fun stuff like that. So Tarot for the Wild Soul for women is another one that I love. And the Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard is always the super fun one. He's super rad and funny. So.
Okay, so we're not going to dive deep into this, but you said that you love politics, right?
Yes.
So where does that come from?
By being educated and being a female and caring about my body and my choices, I feel like it is extremely important right now. And also having a stepdaughter that's 6 and a daughter that's 2, it is one of the most important things for me to be involved in right now is for them and their future.
Right.
Yeah, I can't stand by right now. It's almost, for me, it's not even politics anymore. It's human rights.
Right, for sure.
So
yeah.
For me, it is one of the most important areas of life that I could be involved in right now, and issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, especially those of us that are younger, do you feel like there's a lot of ignorance or uneducation in terms of politics with us younger generations currently in our country?
I think it's getting better.
Okay, yeah.
I definitely think it's getting better. I think that young voter turnout is on the rise. I'm definitely getting hopeful. But if the amount of people that were following Kim Kardashian on Instagram would care about politics, I think we'd be in a better place.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing, but how did you, outside of your daughters, how did you kind of get into politics? Like, I mean, what was kind of like that main like impetus or like kind of that point where you're like, you know what, I need to educate myself, and I need to learn more about this, because growing up going to school in our country, like you don't learn a whole lot about politics, right? So what was that turning point or that impetus? What was that moment where you're like, I need to get into this, or I love this, kind of however you word that?
I think that I've had some good influence in my family.
Okay, cool.
I have an uncle that was very involved in politics.
There we go. Cool.
And I've had some really good conversations with him just growing up. My dad as well. And so I think that I've just been around it.
Awesome, yeah.
And just having conversations with them. I also grew up in El Paso, Texas. And being in a border city, you're just exposed to so many things that I don't think you would otherwise be exposed to, maybe being in a suburban inland area.
For sure, yeah.
So I've just had those opportunities put in front of me, fortunately.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I could see you being a rockin' politician.
Yeah, don't tempt me.
Oh, I
Don't
will.
tempt me. I tease my husband.
I can't wait till I
time.
see you Monday when I get stretched at StretchLab. I'm gonna be like, "There's the politician."
He's petrified for sure.
Oh, I think you'd rock it.
Thanks, Quinn.
For sure. Actually, I reached out. There's a young lady. We're podcasting here in Edgewater, Colorado, where I live, and I went to one of the city council meetings at the beginning of the year, and there was a lady that's running for some like office or whatever for. I think she's a lawyer, and she's running for some office, locally. And I reached out to her to have her come on my podcast or whatever, and I don't know if it'll happen. There's some different things going on, but I definitely invited her, because it's just like, that's one of my goals for the podcast. Yes, it's the 127 Fit podcast. We do talk about a lot of fitness, but I love bringing on people where a lot of times we're not even going to talk about fitness. You know what I mean? Because I want to have open conversations with not just people within the fitness community, but all types of people, right? I've reached out to some like local rappers and different things like that, because that's where I really learn. That's how I get educated, by listening to different people, having different conversations with different types of people that maybe our paths wouldn't cross outside of a podcast conversation. So,
love that.
But cool. So let's. I want to find out more. So you just talked about growing up in El Paso, Texas, correct?
Absolutely.
So we kind of already know that. But if you don't mind sharing with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners, Ryan, kind of what were those younger years like? You already kind of talked about some political influence and stuff through some family members, but what was the younger years like? Siblings? Were you involved in extracurricular activities? Were you involved in sports? Just kind of paint that picture for us of what the childhood was like for you specifically, Ryan.
Sure. So grew up in El Paso, Texas, like I said.
Yep.
It was a border town. It actually kind of sits in the corner of New Mexico and Mexico. So it's a really unique place to grow up.
Right.
It was really interesting to grow up in this area, because the diverse culture that's there is so unique. You're exposed to so much, and if I can talk about that for maybe a little bit, because
absolutely, please.
There's so much fear around the border and around Mexico, and there's so much talk about building a wall and immigration and what that looks like, and where I do think that sensible immigration reform is needed, of course, and we do need to be safe. There's so much fear around what that looks like, and it really it makes me incredibly sad to see that, because it couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
And it's an incredibly beautiful gift to have this country so close to our southern, border.
Right.
And to share their culture and their love of family and food and all of the things that we can learn from them and share with them. And growing up, there was never that fear. And there's still not that fear. So it's just interesting to see this picture that's painted that's just not true,
Right,
or
right.
relevant. So just wanted to put that out there.
Of course, and I just want to interject quickly because like I've put myself and I've been in a lot of different situations in the sense of like I used to live in inner city Detroit. Like I was the only white person in my neighborhood, all of that, right? I grew up in upper middle class, Northwest Iowa, mostly white, all that type of stuff, right? I've been in inner city Detroit. I've worked on, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I was around Native Americans, and those experiences really opened up my eyes and opened up my heart, right? But is it fair to say that most of us human beings, we fear what we don't know?
Of course, yeah.
Right.
Just being uneducated and not knowing
For sure.
is
Yeah.
scary. And so you watch what's painted on TV,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
And fear is a very scary emotion, and it feeds the hungry.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And it's really scary for those people that use that to move herds,
Right.
right? So just putting it out there. If you haven't been to a border town, go check it out. It's awesome. Amazing food, amazing culture, amazing people. They'll probably invite you into their homes and
Right,
feed
for
you.
sure, yeah.
So it was an amazing place to grow up, and I loved it. I was actively involved in sports my entire life. I have 2 younger brothers.
Cool.
So I was the leader of the pack. Shocker there. And played tennis. I was a gymnast, swimming. Oh my gosh, you named it. You name it, I did it.
Yeah.
And then got into high school and discovered that I wanted to hang out with the boys and drink the beer. So I became a cheerleader, much to my mother's dismay. And became a cheerleader and had a blast doing that. And yeah.
Okay, so I wanna touch on just like your parents' influence, because all of us as adults now, the adults that were in our lives when we were developing and we were growing up, those adults in our lives at that time during childhood play a significant role in who we are and who we become as adults. Not meaning that we have to become our parents, not meaning that we have to become those adults, but those adults during our childhood have a huge impact on the rest of our lives. That's what I firmly believe, right? So what was that influence for your parents? Because just the way you speak, obviously you've gone through some different experiences in your own life after you moved out of your home, and you've done learning and growing and maturing and doing deep inner work on your own. I get all that, but just your personality and just kind of who you are, a lot of that I bet probably starts with your parents. So and if not, you can correct me, but what was the influence, what was that relationship like for you, Ryan, in terms of your parents?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom was obviously a huge influence on me.
Right.
We're basically the same person, but she's blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm colored like my dad, but we look exactly alike. She's bigger than life, huge personality,
Right.
typical Texas mom, right? And she always pushed me to believe that I could do anything
That's
that
powerful.
I
Yep.
put my mind to. So I just never was scared to do anything. Anything that I would sign up for, I just figured I would win. So I was never afraid to sign up for anything or join anything because I just figured I'd be great at it.
For sure, yeah.
And not fail. And even if I failed, it was no big deal. And she always would stand behind me 100% and be there to support me. So she really gave me that gift. She also gave me the gift, although she might not agree with me. She's a very religious person.
Right.
She's hardcore Christian. She was the area director for Young Life. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I am, for sure.
Yeah. So she was always very influential with me and my brothers in that area. And it just never really jived with me personally, but she pushed me to really find my own spirituality where I was always just such a seeker for some kind of truth in my life.
Yeah.
And that's where I became such a seeker of knowledge outside of any kind of conventional religion. So I got very into yoga, and I would have never probably found it, but that's where I found some kind of connection with something outside of me.
Right.
And I, traveled the world, trying to find something outside of me, and got into things that I probably never would have, other than my mom
Right.
pushing something down me. So I really, admire her and really thank her for that in some weird roundabout way.
Okay, so
That's my mom.
I want to. Okay, do you want to talk about your dad or?
My dad is just amazing. He's like
Okay.
my best friend. He
Okay.
is so fun. He is the favorite among all of my friends. My husband is like, I could not have asked for a better, father-in-law.
Yeah,
And
okay.
we can just, that's Lester.
What's the biggest influence that he's laid in your life or given you?
I think I can tell a super quick story. And
Yeah,
this is
please.
My dad has always taught me unconditional love and acceptance, and just to always be there. When I stole my parents' car when I was 15, I was awesome, Quinn, let me tell you. And
Oh,
it was
man.
my mother's minivan.
I wish
in
I would've
the Upper
known you back
Valley of
then.
West Side El Paso. Oh my gosh. And my mom caught me when I had returned the car. She had, figured it out. And instead of like busting me and grounding me and yelling at me, all she said was, "That's fine, but you're going to tell your father what you've done." And that was like the worst, was that I was going to have to tell my dad. So my dad gets home from work, and I am just crying so hard I can barely breathe. And she's
Right.
like, go tell him what you've done. So I, shuffle my feet over to my dad, and I'm like, I can barely talk. I'm like, "Dad, I took the car." And he just opened his arms and hugged me, and he said, "It's okay, I love you." And my mother just threw her arms up and was like,
Right,
"I can't
right.
believe you." Lester was so mad that
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all he did. But in that moment, I knew that there was nothing I could do that my dad wouldn't love me over. So,
That's powerful too.
but I'll never forget that.
Yeah, yeah.
That I was so scared to tell him, and all he told me is that he loved me. So there you go, Kim.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a question. I want to touch on the religious upbringing, because I have that's how I grew up as well. So you said that kind of like just like your mom's faith, her religion, that she was practicing, like you didn't jive with that. What was the turnoff, or what was the issue or struggle that you had with your mom's religion?
I think for me is that it wasn't maybe accepting of everything and all, or that it just maybe seemed judgmental to me.
Right.
Or there were probably just several different things that just didn't seem right to me. There was just something that just didn't resonate with me in my soul. It just didn't. I was just like, no, that doesn't seem right. Or, like I would have a friend that, just happened to like other girls or something. They would be like, "Well, honey, that's not right. So we're going to have to like reprogram that in you."
Right.
And I'd be like, "Well, that just doesn't seem right," because I just happened to be in the belief that maybe that's the way she was born. And so
Right.
I think that now I've gotten to the point in my life or my maturity where I'm okay with everybody just kind of believing whatever they believe. And for a long time, I had a really hard time with my mom believing what she believed.
Right.
And now I see where it has really helped her get through some really hard times in her life. And where if she didn't have something that was so foundational and so strong for her, that I don't know what she would have done. And so I have really mad respect for that. And just because maybe the institution feels that way, maybe my mom doesn't feel that way, and that's okay too. So I found out that maybe I was judging a little bit more than I was accepting that I was judging. So I've grown a lot in that area, but for me, that's just what kind of turned me off a little bit too of it, was more the institution of it.
Of course.
So that's where I've come to, is I really don't like the institutions as so much the belief systems is where I'm having a really hard time with the institution of religion.
Yeah. Do you have did you take issue or struggle with the concept that the Bible talks about in terms of hell?
No, I mean, I believe that there's just some really great stories out there. And stories are great, and I just don't know if they're like based in fact. Right. But stories are really amazing, and stories have a place. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
I'm just always, I mean, it's really just interesting the threads of similarities, or the thread of similarity that there is with all the different people I've had on my podcast, because I would say the majority grew up very similar to how you grew up and I grew up, in terms of, you know, the religion being, you know, conservative Christianity, or some sort of Christianity. Maybe it's not quote unquote conservative Christianity, but definitely a presence of Christianity. And it's interesting to see how you know, different people have, for the most part, I would say, walked away from that Christianity or that form of Christianity, and have gone out to explore different things. So that's why I'm always interested, because I've had my own wanderings in my life. I use that word, like my heart, you know, has wandered in different directions, and I'm not going to get into my story right now, but that's why I kind of want to talk about that, or I like to pull some of that stuff out, because it fascinates me.
Sure.
Again, it goes back to like just we grow up with these adults, and you know, we are conditioned to believe certain things, to act a certain way, to look at the world a certain way, and it's not only the adults in our lives that put that conditioning in us, but it's where we grow up, right? Yeah. It's the environment, all that type of stuff. So, you know, I get really fascinated by hearing people's stories and how they became who they are today, right? And that's why I always go to that backstory, because who Ryan is today, some of that is who you were yesterday and in that childhood, right? Yeah. So that's why I was just kind of pulling back that a little bit, because I have some similarities in my own life. So
Very true.
We got up to high school. What did post high school look like? Did you go off to college? If you did, what did you study? Just share a little bit about that, and then we'll move on from there.
I did. I went off to college. I went to New Mexico State University.
Cool. Okay.
And I picked the easiest major I could. It was hotel, restaurant, tourism management. I wanted to be done in 4 years and have a party. So I did. And it was great. And post-college, I spent some time in Spain, and that was great. Almost didn't make it back because I just wanted to stay. It was fantastic. Yeah. Loved my time there. When I got back, I took off to Los Angeles.
Okay.
Spent some time in LA. Had great jobs there. So much fun. Post-LA, moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. Worked there for some time. That's where I fell back into the fitness industry. And post Scottsdale, moved back to El Paso.
Okay.
And then met my husband, had Luna, and ended up here.
Okay.
So we're gonna sitting here with you.
Right. Okay, we gotta dissect a few things. Yeah. So okay, so you go to college, you enjoy college, you get your degree in the restaurant.
Yeah,
and
hospitality.
Hospitality, management type stuff. Now, when you are going, to Spain, and you're going to LA and Scottsdale, Arizona, and all these different places, at any of those stops, were you involved in like the degree that you actually got in college or not?
Yes, because
okay.
everybody told me that I needed to be in events and sales because I had a great personality.
Of course.
And so that's what you do. And I did.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I had super fun jobs. So I worked as an event planner at the Pasadena Convention Center.
Cool.
I was very lucky to get that job. And so I did, one of my first jobs when I was like 25 years old was the People's Choice Awards. I still don't even know how I did it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like one of those things that you do when you're young because you're just ignorant and you're like, yeah, I can do that. And now I look back at it and I'm like, how did I do that? And it was a blast. It was fantastic. And then I got a job at the Staples Center. So I worked at the Staples Center for a few years, and that was fantastic. So much fun.
Yeah.
But events are for the young because they're long, grueling hours.
Right, right.
But a ton of fun. Then I was working at the Staples Center, and I remember feeling like something was missing. And I was missing that physicality in my life. Some kind of like physical fitness, but I was also like, I was searching for something.
Right.
So kind of like what you were talking about, like being a seeker. And I love that because I feel like, especially in your 20s, it's almost like your work is to start to take off all that conditioning that we've had, or hopefully I love that word woke, right? Hopefully you get woke enough that you start to realize like, oh, I've got some conditioning. I need to start peeling those layers of onion that I have, right? So I started to realize, okay, this is not really who I want to be. I don't want to be this girl in the suit chasing this career. Like, this is not filling my soul.
Right, right.
This is not the path. Like, I was swimming upstream.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't feeling right. And it's what a lot of my family members, I think, wanted for me and what society thought I should be doing. And it was fitting that mode of what, like, the pageant Ryan was supposed to be doing. Oh, because I was, like, Miss El Paso and all this. That's, like, a whole nother rabbit hole.
That's a whole nother hour conversation.
Yes. But it was like that Ryan that everybody wanted to be, but it wasn't like who my authentic Ryan was.
Yeah.
And so I started just kind of researching on the side, okay, what else could I be doing, right? So I started looking into like yoga, but that was a little too hippy-dippy and a little like Christian weird stuff that my mom, was like, I don't know. So then I found Pilates, and I thought, okay, but Pilates is what really, pretty girls do, and they wear like the tight pants and they make a lot more money, so that's what I should do. Because I was still in that like conditioning. And so I decided to move to Scottsdale, Arizona, pursue my Pilates degree, which is, pretty intensive. Still work for another company, so I got picked up doing sales with DirecTV out of Staples Center.
Okay.
Moved to Scottsdale, went to school for Pilates, and then did a small part-time job with a little showroom that had just opened there called Lululemon. Because they had just started kind of opening outside from California in the United States. So I worked part-time at this little showroom called Lululemon and started teaching Pilates when I left DirecTV. Teaching Pilates, and found out very quickly that Pilates, as incredible as it is, because it is amazing, but it's the same thing over and over and over, especially if you teach the classical. And I got very bored very quickly with my personality. And I was taking yoga classes and got very into yoga, working for Lululemon, and fell in love with it. And I found that connection with something outside of myself, that spiritual connection that I'd been looking for. And so then I found myself kind of like sneaking in some yoga while I was teaching my Pilates clients. And I thought, okay, I really need to be doing more yoga. I should probably go to school for maybe yoga. What's going on here? Meanwhile, Lululemon was like, hey, you're amazing. You should be doing more than just part-time. So I found myself very quickly getting sucked back into the corporate America. And before I knew it, I was a manager at Lululemon, and I'm like opening these stores right and left. I'm working for corporate at Lululemon, and I'm not teaching anymore at all. So I had gotten into the fitness industry and then very quickly got into like retail fitness.
Yeah.
And found myself pretty unhappy very quickly again. So that's like 5 years later, and decided in some very like deep goal setting and emotional coaching with myself, decided that I was going to leave Lululemon and I was going to move back to my hometown in El Paso to give back to my community, because every time I'd go home to visit my parents and whatnot, there was no yoga in El Paso really.
Right.
And I wanted to give back, and I wanted to be around family. I was getting ready to turn 30. And I thought, if I'm going to meet somebody or have kids, I want to be around my family. Like, I was just getting to that age, and I thought that was really important to me. So I decided to leave Lululemon and move back to El Paso, and everybody thought I was insane. But I did it. So moved back to El Paso, opened my very first yoga studio that was in this very tiny old historic house. It was really cute, Quentin. It was like a little room. It fit maybe 15 people in it. And I had a little storefront that Lululemon let me carry some clothing items, and it was awesome. And I lived my best life for like a year. And then I got really successful very quickly. My yoga studio was called Casa de Yoga. And I went from like 3 employees. And then within 5 years, I went to having that to a business partner, 4 studios, and over like almost 40 employees.
All in El Paso?
Yes, with a yoga school. We were like pumping out yoga teachers, and it got so overwhelming. I made a lot of amazing successes and a lot of amazing mistakes, as most entrepreneurs and business owners do. And I ended up closing 2, selling or giving 1 to my business partner. In that time frame, that last year, I got married and was pregnant with Luna, and had opened that last studio, and it was like probably the biggest mistake to do all 3, all within the same year.
Right.
But no one was going to tell me that I couldn't do something, right? And it just kind of like took over.
Right. Okay. So I want to touch on, like you mentioned you had some great successes, and you had some pretty big mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Let's just, is there like one mistake? And I want to just kind of stay in the sense of like the entrepreneurship when you started opening up your yoga studios and expanding there in El Paso. What would you say, like when I say mistake, like what's the first thing that really pops up in your head in terms of that entrepreneurship journey and kind of that time in El Paso, again, opening up your own studios?
Learning to say no.
Okay.
Just to say no. No is such a powerful word. And I wish I would have said no to a lot of people and no to a lot of opportunities. And it's okay to say no.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. And I just wish I would have done that, I think, now in retrospect. But
what would you say was like your greatest lesson learned, whether it was maybe a negative situation or a positive situation, however you want to kind of take it? What was your outside of learning to say no? That was kind of like one of those mistakes, right? But what was the outside of that? What was maybe the greatest lesson during that time of your life that you learned that has really stayed with you, stuck with you, and really maybe catapulted you forward into the woman that you are today?
I think that at the end of all of it, I'm still standing here and I didn't die.
Mm.
It was one of the most amazing experiences
Of course,
I've ever had.
Yeah.
And one of the scariest things I've ever gone through at the end, because no one understands what it's like to really have your name on the line
Right.
and have everything that you've ever built put on the line unless you're in it.
Right,
and I don't
right.
care what they tell you. Unless you're doing it, you have no idea what
For
that's
sure.
like.
Yeah.
So to know that I did it, I was amazing. I succeeded. I won awards, and then I didn't, and I failed, and I came out of it, and I didn't die.
Right.
And now I live in another city, and I have another great job, and I have a family, and I'm still living, and I have an entire life in front of me. I read other people's stories that own other companies, and it's like, oh yeah, I had 3 other businesses before this one that I failed at, and it's like, oh, like my life wasn't over.
Of course not.
Then,
Yeah.
But if you would have told me that while I was going through it,
Right.
I couldn't see that because I was in the middle of the storm.
Right.
So knowing that I survived that and I'm bigger and better for it is a huge lesson for me to learn and made me a stronger, more confident woman ever. And I think a greater general manager for the owner that I work for now.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes and tells me something, I say no real quick for her. It's really easy for me to say no now.
You're awesome. It's like, I'm going to say that. But, okay, so before we talk, what's your husband's first name again? Michael. Okay, before we get to Michael and Luna, and then you also said you have a stepdaughter,
I do,
right?
Olivia.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to them, during, up to this point, let's say up to this point, as we're sitting here today having this podcast conversation, what's been outside of like, I want to step outside of like, family, outside of business and all that for you personally, like when it's Ryan by herself and you're just, examining your heart, searching your soul, just doing whatever you do, kind of just in your own thoughts and your own time. Like what has been like the biggest struggle for you as an individual, as a human, as a woman, just throughout your 20s and into your early part of your 30s?
Whew, that is such a big question for a female.
That's a big question for any human being.
I mean,
if somebody asked me that, I'd be like,
gosh,
dang, here we go.
Loaded. I want to say that for me especially, gosh, just rediscovering who I am now. And I don't want to make it about anyone else because it is about me, but shifting from being a young woman to now being a mom is such a weird transition. And not enough females talk about it, and they don't talk about the truth that's behind it because it's not easy and it's not all peaches and cream and rainbows and sun rays and whatnot. There's a lot of struggle that comes behind it, and it is very selfless. And especially if you're not the type of female that maybe, or I should say, if you were the type of female like I was that had very much her own agenda going on before,
Right.
to all of a sudden your whole life has to be about something else.
Right.
You literally do not matter anymore at all. And to find the balance between society telling you, oh, but you do need to matter. It's all about self-care. If you don't take care of yourself, Ryan, then who's going to take care of your family? And it's just, I'm still struggling with how to do that and how to find balance with everything. So So for me, it's trying to figure out who I am now. It's a lot. It's a lot. And with all the transition that I've gone through of moving and losing my identity with my business and just so much change. It's just been, it's been a lot. So I want to say that has been the biggest thing the biggest challenge as a woman for me right now is who am I now? Right. And birth is not fun and not pretty. Yeah. Especially if it's complicated. And I royally messed up that situation for myself. So there's a lot of guilt around that. And we could have an entire podcast about that, like health and wellness.
Oh, we will, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
Because seriously, Ryan, like this is the power of this platform in terms of podcasting and providing a platform for people to share their story. Because it's like, we all, I don't want to say we all have a facade, but we all like we've interacted at StretchLab. I come in once a week, I get stretched out, right? So like when I come in there, obviously you're in your business professional, taking care of, whatever needs to be taken care of because, that's how you're getting paid. That's how you're providing for your family. So like that's the energy that I get, right? But that's the thing I love about this, having in-person, face-to-face conversations with people, because especially with social media and Instagram, it's like we see the highlights. We see all the trips and all the honeymoons and all this stuff, right? That is a very small part of the reality of people's lives, right? 100%. And so the same thing in a business professional setting, right? I'm going to see Ryan and she's going to be just the gusher that I call her and just high energy and amazing and all this stuff. But this is real life, and that's why I love having these conversations, especially face to face, because I feel the energy that you're putting off when I ask you that question, and it's like, whoa, that's loaded, and then you begin to share, and this is the power of storytelling, and that's why I always want people to share their stories on this platform, because there's so much power in human beings sharing their story. Because a man's gonna listen to this and be like, you know what, I'm going through that right now, or I've been through that, they can relate, and that's going to positively impact them, right? Absolutely. So that's just we're getting into the nitty gritty of your story, even though, there's obviously a lot more to it, but we're getting past the professional setting that I know you in, right? And that's where, for me, I enjoy it, and that's where that power of vulnerability and transparency comes in storytelling, So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's real life, right? 100%. And real life needs to be exposed more, because most of us, I feel, especially us younger people, we're living in this social media dream world. That's not reality.
Absolutely.
Right? So thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
It's good. You're very welcome. Okay, so before we transition into coming out to Denver and all things StretchLab, because I love StretchLab, let's touch on Michael and just kind of that experience, because you said you moved back home because you felt like you wanted to get married, you wanted to start a family, you wanted to be around your own family during that process. I believe that's kind of what you mentioned earlier. So what was that like? Was getting married and having a family, is that something that's kind of always been in your heart since you were a little girl? And just walk us through, even though now it's been you're in a transition, you're finding out the reality of all of that. It's difficult, it's not easy, but first of all, was that something you've always wanted to get married and have a family? And then second of all, what was that experience like when you actually met Michael and you were kind of stepping into that?
Sure. So I thought, I think just like everybody, you think that maybe later in life you'll probably meet someone and get married. I definitely started to get into my 30s and think, ooh, maybe this isn't going to happen for me. Then I started to be coined with my family. They started to nickname me, and we called myself Auntie Mame. I don't know if you know that old movie, but it's hilarious. It's just this old rich aunt that's a serial dater that travels the world and raises her nephew and spoils him. And I thought, okay, well, I can be Auntie Mame. There's no problem with that. So I just didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah,
and
of
I was
course.
open to possibility. But lo and behold, I met Michael. And it was in a magical, amazing fluke kind of, but destiny, crazy cool story.
Yeah.
And it happened, and now we're married, and we have little Luna, and that is our life.
What's been the greatest lesson, or what's like, you know, presently that one thing that marriage has taught you? Because earlier you talked about, you know, having, you know, Luna and things like that. And you're just learning, like, it's not about you, and you're you know, have to basically kind of like serve her and just be very unselfish. What's been that lesson that marriage has taught you? And then obviously, it sounds like Michael had a daughter when you guys started dating and things like that. So what were the dynamics like for that?
Oh God, I don't. You're gonna have to like add like a bunch of beeps to like beep out all my bad words.
Oh, no,
I'm
you don't.
kidding.
No, it's just raw. It's 100% raw.
I'm just kidding.
Be you. It's all good.
You know, I have nothing to say about that situation except for that it's a lot better now. The biggest lesson that marriage has taught me, or the biggest eye-opening probably that it has given me, is that people always tell you that marriage is a lot of work.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Or relationships are work, right?
Of
and you're
course,
like, oh, but marriage is work. Times that by 1 million, okay? Marriage is work times 1 million. Times 1 million. There are days that I look over at Michael and I am like, God, I love you. And it's a love that's not the, like, God, I love you.
Yeah.
I just want to like jump your bones. It is not like that, because that shit flies out the window right away. Okay?
You're awesome. I love you
does.
so much.
Like,
That's
it just
great.
does.
That's great.
But it's a love, like you look at each other and you're like, man, I've made it with you. Yeah. And we're still pretty new. But like, I look at him and I'm like, man, we did it together. You know, he's your, or that your partner is like your teammate, you know,
right.
It's your ride or die. It's your, like, I know I can count on him, and it's your partner in this insane roller coaster of life that we're on. So it's a lot of work.
Right.
But it is the love that you don't know yet in a relationship that you're in until you're married. And if you can stick it out, it's a love that is really unique and really incredible and awesome. Yeah.
I am yet to experience all that, but you know.
Wait a long time. Just
I've been waiting. It's all good though. It's all good. So I want to kind of just finish off, Ryan, with kind of like how did you guys end up here in Denver? Because before I turn on the mic, I knew that you had just moved here pretty recent, and I asked you guys got here right around Christmas time of 2019, so very recent. How did you guys end up here in Denver? And then let's talk about StretchLab. How did you obviously you got hired there, but how did you come across StretchLab? Yep. And then kind of like let's talk about what StretchLab is all about. And I'm going to probably share a little bit because I go there and get stretched out once a week. But how did you get to Denver first? And then let's start diving into StretchLab.
Absolutely. So we were living in El Paso, Texas. My husband is a kick-ass chef, and he was the chef de cuisine for a place called Taft Diaz. Okay. And it was the top place to eat in El Paso. So for Michael, he was already at the top of his game in El Paso. And so we really had to make a decision for our family. where else was he going to go? You know, and it was, you know, what else were we going to do there?
Right.
So if he was going to take his career further, which he wanted to, he had just gotten done staging at a place in Mexico City called Pujol, which is one of the top restaurants in the world. And he was ready to take his career and light it on fire.
Yeah.
So we literally put it out to the universe and was like, okay, we don't know what to do here. Let's just manifest, like, if we're supposed to make a move and pick up our family and take off and raise Luna away from family and start over somewhere, then somebody call us and give us an offer or something, because we don't know what to do.
For sure.
And literally, like a week later, Michael got a call from Old Major here in Denver, and they offered him a job. And we were like, holy shit, like, be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
And so we took it, and before we knew it, we were here. So it happened very quickly.
Right.
We moved up here, and right away I needed to start looking for work. I've always been in the fitness industry. I had gotten the yoga studios closed and under wraps, and I was working for a family privately in El Paso, Texas. So I was under contract with them, and once they were done and they were going to their home in Aspen, I flew out here and knew that I wanted to either continue in the fitness industry in some realm, but finding another gig like that in El Paso was good. I mean, I didn't know anybody like that had an estate like that in Denver.
For sure.
So I started researching different companies, and when I found StretchLab, it was like, what is this new concept? Like, this is incredible. This is basically what I was doing for a few of the family members that I was teaching, but I didn't know that it was like an actual concept at a facility. And I thought, like, gosh, well, could I make enough money just stretching? Maybe I could do a couple jobs, but then what would I do with Luna?
Right.
And being a mom and working full time, and being what we call in the industry a chef widow, you know, is a real struggle. So I had to look at all of those things, and I saw that they had a general manager's position, and I applied online and literally got in my car and drove to StretchLab and walked in the front door with a suit on. And Marcy was at the front door, and I was like, hi, I'm Ryan. And she was like, oh my God, I think I just sent you an email. And I was like, probably. Well, here's my resume, and I'm your new general manager. What's up? And that's basically what happened.
That's so good.
Yeah.
No, tell her, because I just met you like 2 weeks ago at StretchLab.
Yeah.
And so what was it that you told her something? Because I walked in and you're like all like just bubbly, and I'm like, whoa! I was like, this girl has got some energy. And I said something about being a free spirit or something. But you told Marcy something? Do you remember like what was it? That was so good.
I don't know.
She said something like, "Why are you right for the job?" And then you don't remember?
I don't know. I
Okay,
told
that's
her
okay.
so many things.
It was so good though.
Because
I was like, "Did you really say that?" You're like, "Yeah, I said that." I was like, "Oh, this girl's cool."
I might have told her. I know I did tell her, like, why are you right for the job? And I said, because my name's not on the lease. And I will work like crazy for you and not be afraid of losing the business. I will work like crazy for you. My name's not on the list.
It was something else, but that's cool.
Yeah.
It's all good.
But I told her many things.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah.
I think I just sent you an email and you're like, yep, probably.
Yeah, but I'm here. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk, and we got to kind of start wrapping things up here pretty quick. But so I want to hear it from you. But what, like, this whole concept, because like I tell people, like when I'm personal training my clients, I'm like, I pay and I go to this place called StretchLab, and it's like 25 or 50-minute session of just all they do is they stretch me out.
Right.
So like why is stretching, and why is like going to pay somebody like a trainer or flexologist, whatever you guys call them? I always get a kick at all that. But why is it important for people to spend that time having somebody stretch them out?
Yes. Well, this is one of my favorite quotes from my dad, that's a physical therapist, is that you don't need to stretch all your muscles, just the ones you want to keep. And it's very true. So stretching in general is so overlooked, and
Absolutely.
it's so incredibly important. And that's why professional athletes or people that could afford it, think of LeBron James, have professionals that before and after their routines or during their workout regimens pay to stretch them out. Okay, so this is not just come around, this has been around forever, but it's only been available to those types of people. Now it's been brought to the masses, right? Through companies like StretchLab. So it's incredibly affordable and it is incredibly needed. So we have anyone from a 14-year-old, gymnast that's trying out for competition, that's trying to prevent injury by her parents because it's an incredible investment that they've made stretching with us, to an 85-year-old man that's trying to prevent hip injury and trying to pick up his grandchildren stretching with us. And then we have everything in between, from triathletes to someone like you that's a personal trainer. So anyone with their varying fitness goals are in there stretching with us. And then we have a flexologist that works with them on that. So it's basically a one-on-one assisted stretching. And when they say, well, what is assisted stretching? I like to say it in layman's terms that it's lazy man's yoga.
Yeah, that's what my stretch girl called it. I was like, good, I like it.
Yeah, it's like you just come in, and it's not a like massage type environment, right, Quentin?
Yeah.
You come in, it's an open studio. We've got the benches laid out. We've got groovy music going on. I'm there making jokes. We're all hanging out talking. So it's a fun environment.
It's chill. It's great.
It's chill.
Great. I love it.
And you lay on the bench. We have you in varying areas, and it's a PNF style stretching. So there is some assistance that you give, but for the most part, we're doing the work for you.
Right.
And we're making sure that you're doing the work.
For sure.
That is so important.
Now, quickly here, talk about, because like the first time I came in, they have me do there's like this computer analysis that kind of tests like where you're inflexible and more flexible and all that. What is that system? And just touch on that, because that's really important in terms of what you guys provide as a service at StretchLab.
Yeah, we have an interactive computer system. It's called MAPS.
Okay.
And so it's specialized for us, so you can only get it at StretchLab. So what you need to do, if you're interested in StretchLab, you need to call us. We'll book an intro session for you so you can try it out. It's $49. You're going to come in. We're going to set you up in front of the MAPS computer. You're going to do 3 squats in front of this computer. Super easy squats. The computer is going to take 3 pictures of you, and it's going to do a super quick analysis to show you where your discrepancies are at, where your flexibility and discrepancies are at. And then from that analysis, your flexologist is going to take you over to a bench. We're going to do a super quick 50-minute stretch, head to toe. And from there, with our MAPS analysis and your 50-minute stretch, we're going to let you know what we think would be a good fit for you in terms of how many times a week maybe you should come in, or how many times a month. Excuse me. It's also going to depend on maybe your schedule or what your fitness goals are, or if you're working up to a race, or it just kind of depends per person. But that's kind of how it goes.
Personalized, right?
Absolutely, everything's personalized.
Yep. Cool. And I can speak on StretchLab, emphatically, because I've I don't know, probably since November or something, been spending the money monthly. Go there, get stretched out. I've had a couple people stretch me out, and like you said, the environment's super chill, it's super mellow, and it's low key, and you guys, in terms of the people that are stretching us out, the clients out, like they get the job done. And it's like, I spend a lot of time doing my own stretching, but what I like to tell my personal and training clients and just even the listeners is like, well, why am I going to spend money each month to get stretched out? As an individual, I can only stretch myself to a certain point. You know what I mean? And so when you have somebody assisting you or kind of helping you get through certain ranges of motion, I personally feel that my muscles and things of that nature through stretching, they need to be challenged in that way, just like I'm going to go into the weight room and progressively overload, so that I can get stronger, bigger, faster, and all that. I feel for me personally, having somebody stretch me out and put me past those ranges of motion that I can put myself in and just really get me where I need to go in sense of my muscles and flexibility, like it's helped me out a lot. You know what I mean? Because again, I can only get myself, we as human beings can only put ourselves in certain, situations in terms of like stretching. So I feel like having somebody stretch me out forces me to go past where I can get myself, and that's been very beneficial for me personally. So I can only speak very highly of StretchLab, specifically StretchLab LoHi, because that's where I go. So to wrap things up, I just want to ask you this last question, and then I'll give you an opportunity if somebody's listening to this, if they want to contact StretchLab LoHi, they want to follow along in terms of kind of like your personal journey, things like that. Ryan, the last question that I have for you, what sets your soul on fire?
Ooh, what sets my soul on fire is supporting other people in their own personal goals and really finding out what wakes them up in the morning by removing what keeps them up at night. And I find that that's why I love managing people so much. And I believe that that's even one of the things that I told Marcy when I was interviewing is I love people development so much, is that no matter where you work, if you can find how you can support people in their own personal goals of what they want to do in their life and find out how the environment of the work that they're doing for you can support them in their own personal goals, it's just such a win-win. Yeah, so that's what gets my soul,
on fire.
On fire.
Sets your soul on fire.
Sets my soul on fire. Yeah, is as helping other people achieve their dreams. It's really it's big for me.
Love it. Okay, so if any of the listeners want to find out more about StretchLab LoHi out here in the Denver area, out here in Denver, if anybody wants to find out more about you, if maybe something that you've said, part of your story has resonated with a listener or listeners, why don't you just kind of share where people can find StretchLab LoHi and find out more about you personally, Ryan?
Absolutely. So our StretchLab location in LoHi is at 1226 West 38th Avenue in Denver, Colorado, 80211. Our studio phone number is 719-671-2398. You can also go to stretchlab.com. You can find us on Instagram at StretchLab LoHi. And for me personally, my Instagram handle is Ryan Prieto. That's SRYAN Prieto. And I'd love for you to follow me. I'm hilarious. You will have a lot of fun, I promise. And yeah, that's it.
Cool. So I just want to thank you for taking time out of your life and for just coming on to the 127 Fit podcast and just sharing your story. I appreciate the authenticity. I appreciate the energy. And I'm definitely going to have you come on again because we gotta dive a little bit deeper into some things. But thank you so much, Ryan. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Quentin. It was my pleasure. It was awesome being here.
For sure. So 127 Fit podcast listeners, I just want to thank you once again for your listening ears. Your listening ears are always greatly appreciated. If you'd like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, or if you'd like to find out more about myself personally, you can find that information on Instagram. Instagram is at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review. Also subscribe to the podcast. That would be great, especially in the iTunes, Apple Podcast app. That subscription, that written review is greatly, greatly appreciated. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guests for the 127 Fit podcast, you can just send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit podcast, in which I know you are, please take that specific episode and episodes and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag Be Someone to Follow. And per the usual, I will leave with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.